So, after 25 minutes, our characters finally get somewhere. This is over halfway into the story.
How do we know what to do? Where to go? How do we know what to do? Where to go?
We look around some bland ruins when a crowd of sniper bots sneak up on our characters. There's also some kind of funny ADR here.
Oh my god, Doctor!
Epso retaliates, which causes the sniper bots to turn on our characters. And I guess despite being sniper bots, their aim is just awful. Anyway, our characters all run into this old target practice range when suddenly Ryan picks up an alien gun claiming,
Call of Duty, man. I've trained for this.
He then proceeds to charge around, blasting the sniper bots, accurately hitting every single one. For a character who had been established as a shy, reserved guy with insecurities about his dyspraxia, it felt very strange and out of character to see him suddenly run around shooting robots, and it killed my immersion instantly. It's not like this is a consistent trait to Ryan's anyway. With the exception of the Series 12 finale, Ryan just kind of returns to the same reserved, quiet character we've seen before. And it's not like Ryan's feelings on this event are explored either. The story just moves on to the next scene. So without offering much in the way of character, it becomes clear what this scene is supposed to be, and that's a shallow means of conveying the Doctor's feelings on guns. Of course, the Doctor's disdain for guns is a fairly crucial component to much of the show's history.
Not, I've got a pistol.
But you never use it.
True. But they don't know that, do they?
But this was a contrived and lazy means of achieving that. First of all, the fact that Ryan could pick up an alien weapon on an alien planet and confidently charge into battle with pinpoint accuracy completely drains any stakes from the story and feels wildly out of character. Not to mention, his expert handling of the gun is let down only by his inability to reload as he charges back to the base with a series of goofy screams. This story didn't appear to be going for a camp tone, and yeah, here we are. Don't worry, Tozen, I don't blame you for not taking this seriously either. The Doctor's argument on guns also doesn't make much sense. Ryan doesn't actually do anything wrong, his gun just wasn't powerful enough to fully take down the robots. That's all he learns. A few moments later, the Doctor then fries all the robots with an electromagnetic pulse that I think she made? I don't even know if she made it, actually. And presents it as her brains over bullets solution.
See? Brains beat bullets.
That is messed up.
So I guess her lesson is, don't use a gun, use something stronger? This adds yet another layer to 13's half-baked morality. Once again, it's parroting the 10th Doctor's disdain for violence, yet missing the actual context of the argument. This Doctor doesn't hate the use of guns to kill, she just hates guns full stop, and it's painfully surface level.
Pull a trigger, end a life. Simple, isn't it?
Yes.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yes.
A life killing life.
Who are you?
No. Guns, never use them. Put the gun down, Ryan.
Look me in the eye. Pull the trigger. End my life.
Now do you see why I don't like guns?
Don't go on about it.
I will go on about it. A lot.
And remember, that belongs to my favourite collection.
This moment also feels like something was cut out in editing.
The best thing about robots is they're powerful, literally packed with power. Super powered.
The Doctor is just monologuing about robots being full of power, yet clearly isn't doing anything to the robot itself. Then when we cut back to her, she suddenly has a convenient button. There's no build-up here, and it's unclear what she's actually doing, so the whole moment just feels kind of underwhelming.
Okay, now that was impressive.
What frustrates me most about this moment is just how much more I think it would have suited Yaz. She's the unfulfilled police officer who wants to do more. It seems like she'd jump at an opportunity for action. Just lose the Call of Duty reference and have her say, I've trained for this. Whilst this moment seems out of character for Ryan, it would have felt like a natural escalation of Yaz's existing personality. Instead, Yaz is given literally nothing to do the entire episode.
Facing the sniper bots was worse than being on duty in the city centre on a Friday night.
So anyway, our characters all head underground to avoid the night. Something that really stuck out to me here was this little moment between Ryan and Yaz.
Second nature now.
No, not really. Thanks for waiting.
Always.
It's nice, actually, but in retrospect, it almost seems to hint at something that was never actually there, you know? The Doctor discovers a big locked door, which they couldn't afford to show us, and through it lies the magic Exposition room. Here, we learn that the planet was previously occupied by scientists, forced to make devastating biological weapons, and it was none other than the Stenza behind it. Yeah, the Tooth Fairy guy from last week. For some reason, this whole episode is trying to place them on the same level as something as the Daleks, saying that they've been ethnically cleansing planets and causing mass devastation, but it's kind of hard to take that seriously when Tim Shaw himself was treated as such a joke.
You may tell your children you were once privileged to encounter Tim Shaw of the Stenza.
Tim Shaw?
Sim Shah.
Tim Shaw?
Sim Shah.
We also get a Ryan dyspraxia moment, which, as with all things Chibnall, uncomfortably halts the episode to draw attention to itself.
It's not my favorite thing. Climbing ladders under pressure.
Also, the Doctor literally sounds like some grimacing primary school teacher here.
Think what you've gone through to be here, and you're still going. I'm proper impressed.
Thanks.
I've never felt less sincerity or warmth between a Doctor and companion. Anyway, it's about time we get to this episode's villain. Something Chibnall had promised for this series was an entirely new roster of monsters, with no returning villains from previous years. I mean, Toothy Face was a bit disappointing last week, but let's see exactly what the Chibnall era has in store for us with this new, exciting, original monster design. Rags? So this is apparently what the scientists were forced to make for the Stenza? How exactly is this a biological weapon?
Can you imagine being forced to invent something so evil?
Also, that's another incongruous design to add to the Stenza's nonsensical aesthetic. They're almost consistent in their lack of consistency. It's a shame because cloth certainly has certain connotations, whether that be bandages or shrouds. There are certainly haunting themes and ideas you could weave in to make them terrifying. Unfortunately, all they really do is float around and tease you about underwhelming story arcs.
The timeless child.
What did you just say?
Or choke you, I guess? They're then dealt with 5 minutes after they're introduced. So, really good villain. Good effort, guys. This is like the equivalent of basing a whole episode around that one scribble monster from Fear Her. The episode tries to ominously build up to them, with all these lingering shots of inactive remnants lying around, but they're quite literally so mundane in appearance that you'd be forgiven for missing them completely. Couldn't we have seeded this some more in dialogue? Have a companion acknowledge their existence? Maybe a moment where they think they see it move? Also, going back to that poorly directed scene earlier, something that stands out to me is how Ryan refers to the ground moving, which of course isn't showing to us.
It's like the ground's moving.
But by the time we do see the ground, it's not even moving, the remnants are just flying over it. The line ends up feeling kind of disconnected to everything around it. This makes me wonder if the remnants were originally supposed to rise up from under the sand, or maybe there were so many of them that the ground itself was composed of remnants, but I'm guessing that maybe budget or time constraints meant it had to be ditched. It's also here that we face more of Chibnall's underwhelming setups and payoffs. Whilst the aforementioned flesh-eating water ultimately has no impact on the narrative, here we do at least get a payoff for Epso's cigar. He mentions it a couple times earlier in the episode, though I'd argue the execution is a little forced. He just sort of begins describing it in great detail out of nowhere.
Have you any idea how rare and expensive these are? It takes half an Althusian lifetime to make just one of these. They make them self-lighting. Just one click of the finger.
But at the same time, obsessing over such an item does seem fitting for his character.
Do you want a sniff? Closest you'll ever get to victory.
Ultimately, it has a pretty underwhelming payoff though. So our characters end up in an acetylene field, surrounded by the remnants. The Doctor gets everyone to start pouring at the ground with their feet, and then tells Graham to take Epso's cigar, and... Yeah, our characters escape unscathed by simply crawling under the gigantic flaming inferno above them. I guess the fact that acetylene burns at over 2,000 degrees wasn't an issue. Neither was suffocation from lack of oxygen, apparently. Now, I get it. This is a show about time travel and impossible things. It's escapism, apparently. But the issue here is, whilst the cigar was at least set up, the acetylene and the giant fireball was not. And this has the effect of making them seem less believable. Instead of spending 6 minutes in a tent, 5 minutes chatting outside, and another 5 minutes napping on a boat, we should have had fun set pieces involving acetylene fields and other planetary hazards. Establish our characters can dodge the fire earlier so that it's reinforced for later. The climax of Jaws is a good example of this. Spielberg felt the original book's ending wasn't quite exciting enough for a movie, and he proposed the idea of an exploding air tank to completely destroy the shark. Initially, there were concerns that the idea wouldn't be believable enough, but the film draws explicit attention to the air tanks and sets them up in a variety of different ways.
You screw around with these tanks and they're gonna blow up!
When it comes to the climax, we accept it because it's believable within the world we've set up. Not to mention, Jaws also has characters that take the situation seriously and act like real people. We may as well introduce the cigar more naturally too. Maybe have Epso start with a few, all but one of which burn up in the crash. This would give him a reason to bring it up and emphasize its rarity, plus create actual consequences for the crash. Something else that confuses me is the logic of how the cigar works. So it's activated by clicking your fingers, right? But in this scene, Graham takes it from Epso and throws it in the air, and then the Doctor clicks her fingers. So does it matter whose fingers click? Presumably not, but if that's the case, that's a horrific design flaw. Can you imagine carrying around some and a person clicks their fingers near you? I realise this sounds like a nitpick, but I'm mentioning it because I think it would have been much more impactful if Epso himself had chosen to sacrifice his cigar. Make it so only he can click his fingers to light it, and have this be the payoff to his character development. I think they might have ADR'd in this line to make it seem like more of a sacrifice.
Do it.
Just because otherwise he has literally no reaction to it at all. As is, we don't really see him develop over the episode. He basically remains a selfish arsehole until the Doctor convinces him otherwise. Off screen, might I add. With the added significance of making the cigar his last, this scene now has a lot more going for it. We're not just paying off the cigar, we're also paying off a character's arc and a planetary hazard in a satisfying way. So with that, our characters quite literally just walk to the finish. That's it. That was our climax. Epso and Armstrong are still debating over who's the true winner, when the Doctor steps in.
Could I make a suggestion?
And with one hard cut, Chibnall voids himself the responsibility of actually writing whatever magic speech the Doctor makes. The speech that quite literally resolves the storyline of these guest characters happens off-screen.
Could I make a suggestion?
Considering the amount of focus their issues had early in the story, one of them being an entire monologue, to immediately exempt yourself of any responsibility in concluding their arcs is unforgivably lazy. Instead, Epso remains an asshole until the very end.
What? Your price. The cigar saved us all.
Seriously? Don't even think I'm going to lose to you now.
And what's perhaps the most baffling fact is that Epso's threats to Ilan actually work.
I promise you that whatever happens, I will get off this planet. And if we don't get what we both fought for, I will hunt you down and ensure that whatever time you have left is both short-lived and agonizing.
So the man who was rich and powerful enough to start the race, compete in it, and fund the prize money is now threatened by this loser.
I started the rally, I competed, and I won, and now I'm going to end it.
His ship is broken, he's an injured nobody, and is being treated as a joke for the entire episode, yet now we're supposed to take him seriously?
And if I raced you now to that tent, you'd be dust. You're a wreck.
This resolution could have worked and been impactful if they'd actually proven something, discovered something about ourselves, or developed, learned something. But there's no emotional resonance. Like, maybe if Ilan had been moved by the joint winners, thinking that this was the perfect way to end the rally, just something, but there's nothing there. So anyway, they all piss off and leave the Doctor and her friends left behind. Something that I find really weird about this scene is the Doctor's reaction to not seeing the TARDIS.
It should be here. We did all this for nothing.
It feels like such an immediate knee-jerk reaction for her to have. And if we're supposed to take this as another example of a character trait, so far our Doctor is bossy, irritating, cold, ineffective, and now emotionally temperamental. Gee, what an appealing character. The issue isn't necessarily that she's characterized this way, but rather that the series treats it as if she's still a quirky, dashing 10th or 11th Doctor, with no characters calling out her weird actions. I found her sudden defeatist attitude to feel incredibly jarring after how casually she had bounced through the episode's other events.
I failed you. I promised you, and I let you down. No, we'll be dead within one rotation.
But I think worst of all is how her companions respond to her.
We can wait, can't we?
Yeah, we've got each other.
We've come this far, ain't we? Who says we're giving up, any of us?
This moment simply doesn't feel earned. You're potentially stranded on a deadly alien planet, ripped from your home by the woman whose involvement led to the death of a loved one, and yet you're all still cheering her on. Had the Doctor fought for their trust throughout the episode, and tried her hardest to ensure their safety, then letting them down here would carry much more weight. It would also add impact to the companion's support of the Doctor, showing that they've grown closer to her and trust in her now. Instead, the perfect little angels who never doubted her continue to never doubt her. It's hollow. So, obviously, the TARDIS turns up. I guess the Doctor forgot that it was phasing in and out, despite literally saying it earlier.
It looks like the engines are stuck in a loop, phasing in and out of time and space. If we get to it when it phases in, I should be able to stabilize it, then I can get you back home.
And it's here that we reveal the TARDIS's new design. Now, the reveal of a new TARDIS interior is admittedly an exciting feature of the revived series, and once again, this has only ever happened twice before. Back when I first watched, it was the anticipation of that TARDIS reveal that actually kept me engaged throughout this episode. I had seen this allegedly leaked design online, and I was silently praying it would be anything but that big crystal monstrosity. So anyway, the design is a big crystal monstrosity. It's probably the least technological feeling of the TARDIS's TARDIS. And I realise the TARDIS is supposed to be a sentient thing, but this is just a little too organic for my tastes. It feels like yet more surface-level quirkiness that doesn't have actual thought put behind it. Like, sure, I guess you're striving for a unified design with the sonic screwdriver, but that was made from a random Stenza crystal. Why is the TARDIS suddenly crystalline now? The quirks don't stop there, though. The console is full of all kinds of strange whatsits. There's like a plastic TARDIS, an hourglass that you can spin, and even a custard cream dispenser. But honestly, I think the worst crime of this interior is that it's just really ugly. The set is really dark, and it's yet more generic orange and blue lighting that's been overused for years now. The crystals look like plastic, and everything feels so small and cramped. But the problems don't stop there. See, they must not have screen tested this set, because apparently it's been an absolute nightmare to shoot in. First, they discovered that those orange lights in the crystals actually show up pink on camera, requiring massive amounts of color correction in posts. You're designing a set for a TV show. How do you not know what it's going to look like on camera? The set also had infinity mirrors everywhere, and whilst they apparently looked great in person, this further limited shooting since you could see the camera and crew reflected in them. Finally, those awful crystal claws are massively obstructive, which once again impacts the usable space and angles they could shoot from. Just compare this wide from the 11th hour to this from the Ghost Monument. You can't even see the console. All of this creates unnatural scene blocking, as the characters are forced to stand around awkwardly in this claustrophobic set. I imagine this is why they barely showed it in Series 11, and whenever it did show up it usually looked tiny on the inside. Now, they did a minor revamp of the set in Series 12, and admittedly it does look better. They've managed to open it up some more, introduce extra levels, and play around with some lighting. But unfortunately, it's difficult to fix a fundamentally flawed design. It's not even like this console room looked good in concept and got ruined in execution. I mean, just look at this. This is the official concept art. I feel like I'm staring at a Magic Eye picture. This especially feels like a downgrade, coming from arguably the best TARDIS set of the modern era. Michael Pickwood's design not only felt like a natural evolution of the classic era's console room, but it was also designed to be as dynamic and economic as possible for filming. Pickwood tried to take advantage of as much space as possible, ensuring everything would be accessible. And he also designed the set to be self-lighting, meaning it could be completely enclosed. This gave a massive amount of freedom to directors when blocking out scenes, allowing for diverse and natural placement of the companions. See in this clip how we have the Doctor on the lower level, talking to Nardole who's on the mid-level, meanwhile Bill flicks through a book on the top balcony. Plus Capaldi has full freedom to move anywhere he wants during his grand speeches. They don't have to worry about which direction they point the camera or what could be obstructing our view. I mean, hell, Pickwood even built a paper model first to ensure his design would work. Meanwhile, 13's console seems more concerned with surface-level quirks than being a practical or interesting design.
Because the Doctor is of a more studious nature, he has lots of blackboards, rather like Einstein, so he's constantly scribbling things at various times.
When he was doing the concept of the TARDIS, he just said, I can't tell you why, but tell me your favourite biscuit.
Here we have Gallifreyan symbols and a high-tech bookcase, but with an 18th century scroll pediment. It's a mixture of a blend of design. That's the TARDIS, it's a mixture of all millennia and everything.
He said, oh, put your foot on that. I said, what? Just put your foot on that. It's like a pedal.
And out pops a little custard cream.
And the look of delight on her face. It's so Doctor Who-y. It's so Doctor Who-y. It's so Doctor
Who-y.
There's also the fact that every other reveal made sure to show us the full scale of the set, whereas this reveal deliberately avoided showing us too much, and I mean, yeah, I can see why. As for our companions' reactions, well, they seem generically amazed, but it honestly has the emotional depth of a puddle.
This is proper awesome.
There's some more tepid dynamics that kind of feels like everyone's running on cliches.
Can I press any of these?
And none of their reactions really say anything about them, or feel particularly unique. I mean, hell, I understand why people might find Bill irritating sometimes, but at least her reaction had something going for it. Not only was the moment well shot, with a great reveal, but Bill's lateral out-of-the-box thinking effectively disarms the Doctor's pomposity, creating a fun comedic dynamic.
It's like a
spaceship
kitchen.
What?
A really posh kitchen, all metal. What happened with the doors, though? Do you run out of money?
I will give them credit though, I do like the police box. It looks a lot more like an actual Metropolitan box, with that sort of R-text concrete texturing on it, rather than the weird square fat wooden box from 2005. And so, they set off for more adventures. Overall, the Ghost Monument is not the follow-up our first episode needed. Despite all its flaws, I can at least credit the woman who fell to Earth for its sense of energy and potential. Yet, rather than developing this, the Ghost Monument acts more as a 48-minute build-up to the TARDIS reveal. Any character moments exist seemingly to remind the audience of their ongoing conflicts, rather than building upon them in a meaningful way. Or they do something stupid that seems to ignore the entire character so far. It's kind of worrying to have what feels like a filler episode so ridiculously early into this era. Very little of consequence happens, and the pace just plods along because of it. What I hoped was just the Doctor's post-regeneration quirkiness is unfortunately here to stay, with a questionable cocktail of other traits gradually trickling in. The remnants are even more underwhelming than Tim Shaw, and are dealt with even faster. And then the TARDIS itself, the entire point of the episode, is such an ugly design to the point of being literally impractical. And that's on top of this era's strange approach to storytelling, almost appealing more to those who aren't engaged than those actively watching. But with our characters reunited with the TARDIS, perhaps now we'll be whisked away on an enchanting adventure in time and space. I wonder where we'll end up next.
1955.
Parks, Rosa Parks.